Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We have a really special guest today, Brett Lickle. He is a part of the Strapped crew. He's an innovator and inventor, and he was there since the beginning out at Pe'ahi. He might have been one of the first guys to windsurf and maybe surf Pe'ahi properly, along with Laird Hamilton, Dave Kalama, and Rush Randall, and the rest of the Strapped crew. So pretty excited to get into it with him. He always has some really interesting concepts, and we are here today because of those guys and because of Brett's innovation. So let's get into it.
I had a little off. Yeah, I had to cut a bill off. Yeah, but if we be real though.
All right, Brett, thanks for coming on. It's an honor to have you because everybody here on Maui knows what kind of contributions you've had to the world of water sports here. And hopefully with this podcast, you know, the mainstream world will also see the stuff that you've done if they haven't seen it already. So we're really stoked to have you.
They've seen it. They just, didn't realize it was probably Brett that started it.
Yeah, well, let's start at what brought you to Maui in the first place?
My first trip to Maui was I kind of hitchhiked onto a family member's summer vacation. And so I'd heard about windsurfing out here, and I was a windsurfer back on the East Coast. And I was like, God, I got to get over there. And so these guys are going to Maui, and I'm like, I'm going with you. And so it was the Hobbs family. I said, Cousin Patty, can I please come? And so I ended up over here in Maui, and the trip was in Hana. And so within 2 days, I'm telling the kids, I go, dude, we got to get out of here, man. This is not where the windsurfing is, So we took off from there, went to Kaanapali. We spent every day windsurfing. We'd come back to the house, and everyone went to sleep at 7 o'clock. And so this family vacation became just a complete nightmare. As far as any of the girls were concerned, the mother, the father, because all three of the boys we'd leave every morning to go windsurfing, and we'd come back completely beat. And so that brought me to Maui. At that point, I saw Hokipa. I was like, oh my God, that's me. I saw a lot of the guys down there. Well, at that time, there weren't a ton of people, but, it was Mike Waltz, it was Matt Schweitzer, it was this whole group. And I was like, oh my God, these are all the people in the magazines. So for me, that was the start of it all. And I went back to the East Coast, back to Delaware, and I just sat there and I just dreamt. I actually, on that trip, no, not that trip, but so I dreamt of coming back. So we put together the next year, we came and we did a month. And in that month, we stayed over in Kihei. In that month, I got stabbed in the back over at the Banana Moon.
No.
And so, that was its own story, but that was the beginning of my experience with the Hawaiian respect issue.
Wow.
Which I had no clue about. We had gone to the club looking to get the wahinis with no idea that was not the right way to do it.
Oh, no.
So,
what year was that?
So I moved out here in 84. So it would have been about 82.
Okay. Yeah, Maui was still the Wild West back then, wasn't it? I mean, that's
for a long time after that, too. Yeah.
You did not go out after dark.
Wow.
And if you did, you were in your own gang. And you felt comfortable because it was 4 or 5 of you when you walked into Paia. But even then, you were going to get trouble. It was going to happen no matter what. If you went to Charlie's, it was going to happen. There was a fight, there was a stabbing, there was whatever, So it definitely was, it was intimidating.
I bet.
Jeez, yeah, it sounds like
but the windsurfing was so good, it was not deterring.
Well, and that was the whole point. For me, that's what I became addicted to. So this trip, I did a month here. Then the next, I went back. I took back a 8-1, Sailboards Maui board, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And I took it back to the East Coast. It's like every day it got windy, I'd get on it, and it didn't work.
Sink.
Well, there just wasn't enough wind to water start.
Oh, yeah.
But I hadn't really figured all that stuff out yet.
Yep.
And so that thing ended up in my basement, completely rigged, harness lines, everything. And I would just sit with my feet in the foot straps, hands on the boom, leaning back into it, and just living this. I was windsurfing in my own mind.
Right.
Because there was nowhere else I could use this board.
Oh, that's crazy.
Gosh.
And I just kept dreaming, going, I got to go to Hawaii, What happened next was my brother had just gotten back from traveling the world. And he'd been all over Indonesia and all these incredible places, but he'd gone kind of on a spiritual quest with another good friend of his. And he came back just kind of hating what was back where we lived. You know, it was just all these pompous rich people, you know, just living their lives in their pink T-shirts and their loafers and the rest of it. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's the East Coast if you don't understand it. You know, I love it, love the food, love the people, but they dress, you know, in a way that most people look at them and go, well, what are you guys thinking, you know? Lost myself there.
Oh, but so essentially, did you and him decide to move out here together, or?
So he basically came back saying, I hate it. And I'd been to Maui. I go, dude, let's go to Maui. We got here, and the first thing we did was go buy a tent at the Salvation Army.
Oh, no way.
And we went and bought $1,000 pickup truck, a 3-on-the-tree Ford, you know, like F-150.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what, it was 84, so it would have been like an 80 or a 70 something, you know. And we went down to Kanaha and we camped at Kanaha.
Wow.
And so we just had all our stuff. And before the van came, we just had this truck and went down to that beach and sat
You used
there.
to be able to drive on the beach back then, right?
Yep, you could drive all the way from what they called Cook's Beach, you know, all the way up and just sit. Everybody just parked on the beach. Everything was a giant party every single day.
Wow.
You know, and
sounds
we lived
sick.
in the bushes at the party.
You're like,
You know?
okay, guys, we'll see you in a little bit. Go lay down for a minute.
And we'd take it over the pine trees up above Cook's Beach.
Yeah.
And that's where we lived. And, you know, every night we would go out and we'd go get lobster off the reef and the locals would show up and they'd be like, Jesus, dude, what are you guys doing? You know, we're like, fuck, we're getting lobster. Look at this. And we'd share it with them and share the beer. And they'd be like, you know about the shark, you know? I mean, why are you doing this? And we're like, no problem. We're not afraid of sharks. You know? and literally that was how it was thought of and it was spoken of, you know? And then one day over in Lahaina, they brought up like a 1,800 pound tiger shark.
Oh my God.
You know,
my
and all of a sudden it's
God.
on the front page of the paper.
And
I
like,
remember-
oh.
No, I look at my brother, I'm like, that was not the shark we were thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, you're thinking like a little reef tip, you know, something you see
Yeah.
in Tahiti or Fiji or somewhere like that, you know?
Not this monster, huh?
Yeah. And so that one got us out of the water. All of a sudden it was like, well, whoa, night diving is not as cool as we thought it was,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah, because you guys were night diving.
Night
obviously,
diving.
for
Yeah,
the
night
lobsters.
diving for the lobsters, you know?
Oh, wow.
And we don't even know if it was the
But
season
that's
or
a real-
not, you know?
To me, that's a real throwback to the guys in the 60s who first went to the North Shore and living in Quonset huts, and they just wait for a big wave in Makaha or eventually Waimea, and they'd spend the rest of their time like diving and fishing and doing, actually back then maybe sailing on the like Hobie 16s, because that was the only wind craft. So you guys were in a way living that same big wave legacy. You just didn't even know the big wave part yet.
We knew nothing about it. I mean, when it came to surfing, the first wave I ever caught, I was probably 12 or 13 years old. My parents had sent us off with the lifeguard to go learn how to surf. And the first wave I took, and the fin went right through my leg.
Oh, no.
And I'm sitting there with this big pile of white stuff, which is going, what the hell is that? Well, that's your fat and ligament stuff. And it's all just hanging out of my leg.
Oh,
and
no.
and off we go to the hospital. And that was my first surfing trip. And the last one until I basically in Hawaii as a windsurfer, my first winter came and I'm sitting there on the beach, just like, where's the wind? Where's the wind? You know, going out when it's not windy enough.
Well, that's interesting when you say that too, because would you say that there's some correlation between, I guess, not having that extensive surfing background and then going into surfing and then kind of being able to look at it from a different perspective? And did that
Through
feed into
windsurfing?
through windsurfing and not having, I mean, with surfers, you know, they get really stuck. It's sometimes in that core mentality where like, this is how it's always been done. This is what surfing is. And I feel like a hallmark of what you've done is really like turning all that on its head and seeing it from a different perspective. Do you think that could add something to do with it?
Well, I think 100%. You know, like I said, we came in with no clue what the Endless Summer was.
Yeah.
Never even seen the movie because it never hit the East Coast and we weren't in that, you know, so-called surf, you know, crew. And so for me, I saw surfing and windsurfing just kind of the same.
Yeah.
And so when people had animosity towards it, it was like, well, whoa, what are you talking about? We're all cool, you know. We're in Hawaii, we're riding waves, but there was this full, like, you know, almost for some people a hatred to it. I don't know if it was because they didn't want to share the waves or they didn't have the money to do it because windsurfing was a much more expensive endeavor than surfing. I mean, surfing's pretty primal. I mean, you can pick up a used board at the dump. That means it doesn't even cost $1, you know? And you become a surfer, you know? And so surfing has that real, like, anybody can do it. Windsurfing was a little bit more elitist. And at the same time, you know, through my whole career in windsurfing, it totally went to that point to where the people who won were the people who had big budgets and could sit and change, you know, configurations on the fins or the bottom of the board. You know, and so all of a sudden, and they're hiding the boards in big sacks, you know, before the events, and they put the sack on while it's still in the water, and you're thinking, is that fair? You know, so it's kind of like the IndyCar thing.
Yeah.
You know, fair. They create fair by saying your engine can only be this big.
Yeah.
You can't enter this part of the engine.
Same chassis, same like wing configuration. It's just how you set up, maybe, right?
Right, because that makes it equal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so in windsurfing, that's what one design was so cool about, you know, and I think that's what made windsurfing really grow. And I think it's what killed windsurfing was the fact that the one design disappeared, which was this introduction into the sport for everybody.
Well, and you didn't need 25, 30 knot Maui winds to go do it. You could go on a 5 knot lake, and it was more fun than your uncle's Hobie because you were standing on it. Yeah, you were like surfing, essentially surfing, you know, you're on a longboard.
That was my first windsurfing experience. The same family that I hijacked my trip to Hawaii with, the mom had gotten into windsurfing. She would show up every day coming back from windsurfing saying, "Oh my God, it's incredible, you guys. You have to come windsurfing." We're all like, "Cousin Patty, we don't want to go windsurfing. It sounds stupid." You know?
And then you tried it. You're like, wait a second.
Well, no, one day she showed up at the beach and she just looked like a fool. Then finally, the next time she came, she just zoomed across this lake. Yeah. It was called Silver Lake down in Rehoboth Beach. And everybody in the group was now in this full frothing fight for who was next to go windsurfing.
That's awesome.
You know, and that was my bug. That was the one that was like, I didn't even need waves.
Yeah, that's so cool.
You know?
Yeah.
So over time, you essentially started linking up with who would eventually become your really close friends. Who was the first person that, I mean, you're still friends with today, but also of that kind of strap crew? Was it like a Mike Waltz, Matt Schweitzer? Was it, when did you link up with Kalama? Was it all, I mean, I guess it would all happen whether you're at Kanaha, but Ho'okipa was the spot, right? Like that was like the pipeline for windsurfing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you didn't get intermingled into the Mike Waltz and Matt Schweitzer if you weren't at Ho'okipa. You know, so my whole first part of my career in Hawaii was at Kanaha. And we had been taught, it's like you go to Kanaha, you learn how to do everything, and then you can come to Sprecklesville. Mm-hmm. And that was this little beach, and it was literally like this stepping stone. And it was like, hey, you don't go to Ho'okipa unless you're ready. And that means you can do a 5-second water start. And it's like, whoa, a 5-second water start. I mean,
like get up really quick.
Yeah, get up really quick, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just, and it was, I don't remember who it was that, you know, kind of gave those little things to us, but we stayed at Kanaha. Then we stayed at Sprecklesville. Each one its own little party scene.
Interesting.
And so cool, you know, I mean, it was like Sprecklesville was incredible. I mean, the parties afterwards with open fires and just full coolers of beer, you know, I mean, that was what it was all about. And then came Ho'okipa. You know, and Ho'okipa was the most, if anybody's been there or anticipated being there, it's a pretty scary ordeal. You know, your first one, you're going out off this beach. It's only 25 to 30 feet wide. And if you can't come back to that, you're coming in on the rocks, you know? And
just to get out, you have to bypass this, you know, rocks, like a rock quarry, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting talking to Kalama because I never thought of this because my time windsurfing Ho'okipa was long after the heyday when it's way less crowded, but he was saying there was a lot of regulation going on out there. So it wasn't even how gnarly the wave was. It was like you have to worry about locals getting mad.
Well, it was crowded.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just.
But that was the local windsurfers.
Yeah.
And that was what I mean. It's like if you were going to get in the way, they were going to tell you to go back. Just like at Jaws. When we first started riding with Jaws, there was many people that showed up that got this one. Back that way, buddy.
Practice down the coast a little bit more.
And that's exactly right. You know, and we never did it till after the first wave. Nobody looked at somebody and said, "Oh, you don't belong here." But if you saw somebody on the wave and it made it to the point where you're going to be in danger, because in theory we're going to be the ones rescuing them, because the driver's never even driven anybody, and they've decided to come up and learn how to tow surf at Jaws. You know, so Ho'okipa was the same way. Mm-hmm. It was like, get out of here. You know, But once you earned your spot in there, and that came from, doing something big, a big maneuver or whatever, it's like, well, okay.
Oh, that guy belongs.
Yeah. And all of a sudden there's that camaraderie that comes from the whole sport of windsurfing. Windsurfing was a really, people looked out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so in all the early days of Hook Keep, it was like
No lifeguards back then.
Nope, dude. When you went on the rocks, dude, there was a crew of people came down to get your stuff. Now they throw rocks at you.
Yeah.
Which I say that because we used to sit up on the hill with these and shoot guavas with these rubber band things at the at the Euros. I mean,
back then to get to Hookkeepa, you had to navigate through pavilions, which the surfers didn't like. And I mean, if they really didn't like you, or if you broke your gear and you drifted up into their territory, you might get hit by rocks, right?
Oh no! I mean, you didn't end up at pavilions with a windsurfer.
You'd bail the gear and just swim in.
That's basically what you should do. The question is, you could probably come in and go, I got a 12-pack down there, so I'm bringing it back, which was my survival instinct. I mean, it's how I got into all of the groups. Was by being the guy that had the beer.
He's sick. He's like, this guy's always has the green bottles.
I mean, there was a point where I drove around in a Honda Rabbit, or not a Honda Rabbit, a Volkswagen Rabbit, and in the back I had glassed the whole trunk of it so I could put ice and cold beer.
No way.
I made it into its own cooler.
Awesome. So when they saw you coming, they were just stoked.
By the end, I had a keg in there. I had the CO2 on it, and the tube just came up to the front seat, and you just sat there in the front seat and just filled your cold beers, and they handed them out the window.
That was a Maui cruiser.
And I think that was how I met Scotty O'Connor. I don't know if anybody, anybody knows Scotty O'Connor. I mean,
Scotty was one of the founding members of Namotu in Fiji, which is one of the best islands on planet Earth that I've ever been to.
Absolutely. I mean, if you get any time down there, you come back completely a different idea of what surf or windsurfing can be.
Yeah. And so tell us about that day you and Dave decided to go out to Pe'ahi, the first time windsurfing. Like, it was maybe crowded at Hookkeepa and
no, it came down to in '87 on Thanksgiving Day, I rode a wave at Hookkeepa that was in my world the most monumental moment for me. Mm-hmm. So showed up at the beach. It is just gigantic, and when I say gigantic, that means there's not a person out. The place is just completely closing out from Maliko all the way to Kahului, and I'm like, I'm going windsurfing, and so. This story is incredible because everybody's telling me, no, you can't go. Please stop.
You're from Delaware. Don't do it.
And I'm like, no, I'm going to go out. I'm going to get a bigger wave than goddamn Fred Haywood got.
And he got a huge one.
And he got a huge one. And my goal was, man, I got to get a bigger one than that. I got to show the world who's the baddest ass motherfucker in the world. And that was me. And so I'm down there, I'm rigging up. I got people telling me, stop, you can't do it. And I go, fuck no, dude, I'm going, man. You watch this shit. And so I get everything rigged up. I go out, I'm on a 4.5, so it's windy as hell. It's fucking 25 feet and closing out, so everything's perfect.
Wow.
And I take off. I can't penetrate the closeouts. There's no, you can't use the channel anymore. It's you either get out or not. So it's like I would charge and I would get so far out and be like, I got it. And then this set would roll into the horizon and you realize, fuck. And you'd have to chicken jive and turn around. So I did that for a solid half an hour. And I'm like, fuck it, okay, it's just not meant to be. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna fucking eat crow and act, everybody's gonna laugh at me. And I come into the beach and I just get fucking annihilated in the shore break.
Oh no.
I mean, I'm like under the sail, stuck under the sail, drowning under it, And literally I could not have had a lower moment in my life. I was so like, just, oh my God, how could this possibly happen? And I picked my rig up, I turned around, and I fucking just headed to the horizon.
I'm not stopping for
nothing. I'm not stopping for nothing. I swear to God, the whole ocean just opened up. There wasn't a wave in sight.
Wow.
And
Rite of passage.
Dude, it was like all of a sudden I'm on the outside. I'm 3/4 of a mile, half a mile out, whatever it is, And I'm sitting there going, holy fucking shit, dude, you made it. You made it. Now you got to fucking show them what it's all about. And so I ride like 3 waves from up in Pavilions, which is the it. And I kind of just get like one turn and kick out, I'm like, oh man, that's fucking crazy, and I'm waiting for the big one. So I do that like 3 times and then fucking there it is. The whole horizon's black. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. It's coming, it's coming. And I sit and I wait for the last set and I take off on it. And I make this little kind of like, a chicken turn, like I'm going to go somewhere. And I'm like, dude, no, there's nowhere to go, So I just kind of straighten out. And the wave, when it explodes and implodes behind me, it completely covers the whole sail. I'm completely gone. I know that at this point I'm dying and this is the end of my life. So I'm going through this whole experience, in slow motion.
Poor Brett.
Yep. And all of a sudden, poof, I'm popped out. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to live. And then poof, I'm back in. No. Because, it caught me again, it was that big of a fucking wave. And then it spat me out again. And I fucking came out of that thing and rode back to the beach. And in my world, forget Jaws, forget all of it. It was the most monumental piece of my life, that I've ever had.
Awesome.
And then it ended up Dave Terry was sitting on the beach and he got a picture of it.
Wow.
And so, for me, it was like here he is.
Yeah.
This kid's from kid's from Delaware, but he's fucking gonna
legit.
Rock it. Yeah. So that had happened. And in my looking back at it, I realized there is no bigger wave I can ride other than Jaws.
Yeah. And you knew about Jaws.
Oh yeah, we've been watching Jaws for 5 years
already.
Or more. Oh yeah, Jerry Lopez had showed us, and from there we would go down every big swell and watch it just go.
What was it like at the first time when he's like, "Hey guys, I have something to show you"?
It was like, okay, whatever, let's go check it out. But no one envisioned it.
Yeah.
You can't envision that.
Yeah.
Nazare, all of them are incredible waves, but they're not Jaws.
No.
When you show up at Jaws and it's 35, 40, 50 feet, it looks like the most perfect wave in the world, but you have no idea how big it is.
So from shore, you're like, were you guys always estimating how big it could be?
Yeah.
And was Jerry like, a little more, a little higher, a little bigger?
Well, no, because you had overestimated it all the way. Like, oh my God. Or no, overestimated. From the beach, you've already scared yourself out of the game.
Yeah.
That's why nobody was riding it. Everybody scared themselves out of the game,
They're like, it's too gnarly. Too fast. You can't make that section.
You're never going to do it. And nobody could tell how big it was until you put a person on it. And once you put a person on it or a jet ski, it's like, ooh, okay. That's a lot bigger than what we were thinking. Just like when you get done riding a wave, you're like, fuck yeah, that was a great wave. And you're like, dude, that was the wave. And you're like, well, now it's just a wave. And then all of a sudden you see some pictures from it. You're like, whoa, man, okay.
You're like, that one would have hurt.
Would have hurt, and you weren't even in there. Meaning in your mind, you were just doing it.
Well, and there was no such thing as safety back then, right? It was like pre-safety, like, board shorts. You sailed up from Hokipa. There's no one on the cliff.
There were no rash guards.
Not even rash guards.
Well, you couldn't buy a rash guard. You took a t-shirt and you cut the sleeves off. That was your rash guard.
Yeah.
And so you had nothing.
Wow.
And that was Hokipa, that wave there. There's no flotation. So if it had gotten me, done, dude. I was a cigarette smoker. I was never prepared for it. For everything I did, I was never prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was the most unprepared of all of them. We rode Jaws, and I'd have a 12-pack of Budweiser in there, and I'd be smoking beaties on it before my run.
You're like, okay, I'm up.
That's epic.
But so okay, so the question was when did we first go out to PI?
Well, just your impression when you're like, okay, we finally take that leap of faith off the cliff. Like, what was the decision? Like, was it just a random day? Like, let's just go up there? Or
no, it was. I had a quest, and the quest was I now was going to ride Jaws, and I was going to show people how big the fucking wave was. And so I waited and waited for the next big giant swell, and it came. Everybody's windsurfing at Hokipa, and I came and I rigged my rig up, and I went right through them. My next tack was Pavilions. My next tack was Turtle Bay. And I was soloing it, dude. This. I didn't need a camera. I didn't need nothing. Homie was going up there by himself.
Oh, wow, that's core.
And
then did Dave catch you?
Dave Kalama saw me going, and he's like, "That motherfucker's going to Jaws." And so he was right behind me. And he's coming up.
You're like, oh, I know what he's thinking.
And then Mark Pedersen, who was another Australian kid, he saw what was going on. He's like, He's going. So that was the three of us. It was me, Dave, and Mark Pedersen.
Yeah.
And I was the lead guy, and I was up at the top, so I got there first. I don't know if I got the first wave or not. I think I probably did because I was the first.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like instantly this thing just rang like, oh my God, this is the most rideable wave in the world. It's absolutely perfect. If you do everything right, you could kick out and drink that 6-pack.
Yeah.
And you're in a nice open channel.
Well, the channel's incredible. I mean, until PI gets to what I call that 50, 60, 70 foot range, you don't even think about it,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the channel as close to totally closing out as ever before with one swell.
Do you remember what year that was?
Every year is a blur. Just like when you get done surfing Jaws and people are like, how many waves do you get? And you're like, I got no clue.
Yeah.
Did you do anything? I don't know.
You almost need to see the video to remember it a little bit.
Yeah,
You're like, wait,
for
yeah,
sure.
I did do that.
No, you have to because first off, we're toe surfing. So you're not just catching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves.
Yeah.
You are catching 25 or 30 on the rope,
And
Yeah.
so at that point, was it like, oh, there's no wind. When are we going to go tow and surf? Well, when did you guys figure that out?
So we rode Jaws, the three of us. And then from there, it was like the word was out. There was, again, no photographers, but the word got out that, whoa, they'd ridden Jaws. And obviously, I'm telling people I fucking rode Jaws.
I'm the man now. If I wasn't the man the last well, I'm the man now.
Yeah.
And so the frenzy was on, And so the next big swell comes. I think there's 6 of us. I think it was Dave Kalama, Rush Randall, Mark Angulo, Mike Waltz, Kai Cacciadorian. It was our whole kind of like the intermediate or smaller group before the Laird whole thing has happened.
Mm-hmm.
We knew who Laird was. We were semi buddies, but it hadn't really happened yet.
But Laird, was he on Maui by then?
He was showing up in windsurfing here and there.
And then he'd go back to Kauai or Oahu.
Oahu. He was spending most of his time over in Hawaii as a surfer.
Yeah.
And at that time he was starting the Velcro stuff, but we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
So we decide we're going to launch off the rocks at Jaws in a swell.
Oh my gosh, that's gnarly.
Because the
fully rigged gear.
So, it was such an ordeal to go up from Hokipa that you were tired by the time you got there.
Yeah.
So the idea was, okay, we'll just get off the rocks. Well, I don't think any of us had really gone down to the rocks. You know what I mean?
Get down there and you're like, oh, these are like dinosaur egg rocks. Like, they're huge.
But there was no reason to go down there because nobody was riding it. You weren't doing anything.
Right.
And so you just sat at the cliff and watched it. Well, now we've taken our rigs and we've got them all backpacked up together and we haul everything down to the rocks down there and we rig it all up and we're just looking at each other going, well, this isn't going to happen because you're looking at this place just detonating. The rocks that are this big are moving around,
No.
I mean, you want to get in the water quick and not be like, with your feet anywhere. So we're sitting there. No one's going to make the move. Set after set after set, and everyone's just kind of getting depressed that it's just too much. It's just not really a feasible thing to do.
Yep.
And just out of the blue, Mark Angulo.
Yeah, of course.
Grabs his fucking rig and just starts running down the rocks. And I swear, everybody grabbed their rigs.
They're like, we can go, okay.
Nope, if he's going, we're going. And
Yeah.
so, which was the worst thing you could do because we clusterfucked the fucking thing up. Where, one rig's hitting the other guy and everything like that, I mean, literally everybody went. It wasn't like, hey, let's see if he makes it. It's like, if he goes, we're going.
Yeah.
And everybody's just getting fucking hammered, holding on to the ends of the mast, trying not to get pulled back in. And everybody makes it out.
Wow. I would not have expected
Everyone made it out. And we had this incredible, sailing experience.
What about coming in?
We all came in at Hokipa.
Perfect.
Which was always the idea.
Yeah.
We were just we were going to launch it. We were going to come in at Hokipa. And that was the birth of it to like, holy shit, this is going to be it.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a Zodiac because I was never jumping off those fucking rocks again.
Yeah. And at that point, was Maliko even a place anyone would ever go to? Because you drive through there, but like people would launch boats to go fishing?
I knew what it was because my brother's a commercial fisherman. So I spent a ton of time, at Maliko, but you wouldn't bring your windsurfer in there.
Yeah.
You'd come in if you were broken down. That'd be the first place you came to, and that's where we would have gone,
Yeah.
Or K Bay. You probably would have gone to K Bay if you broke down.
Okay.
Would have been.
Yeah.
And I knew about K Bay, but we won't talk about why that. But
But Maliko was but was there a boat ramp there? Yeah.
Yes, and the boat ramp was in pretty good shape.
Wow.
So it was a lot of the swells during that early part of our, jaunt up at Jaws. That boat ramp got destroyed. I mean, there were swells where skis got shoved all the way up past the highway bridge, and were just stuffed up into trees and shit.
Oh my gosh!
Nobody even thought of launching at Kailua because you wouldn't make it because there wasn't enough gas.
Right. Oh, back then, right?
Yeah, because you were running a turtle.
Yeah.
These are these little
and that's 15 miles.
Yeah, 715 cc, little ski with 2 people on it.
So you needed to launch as close as you could
to be able to get a good session in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it was that, and also kind of the hiding of it. So the whole first part was in pickup trucks, tarps over the.
Is that why you guys camouflaged them too?
Yep, totally. Didn't want you to see us in the water. It was like, and it wasn't for any other reason than this was the crowd buster. There was no crowds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not only was there no crowds, but it was like you could just you had 6, 7 people of the group, and you just were like cycling. So if it's 7 people or 6 people, you've got 3 people riding. Well, there's always 3 waves in a set. So everybody got a wave out of every great set.
And it's not like people wanted like more than they could chew essentially out there.
Right.
You get a couple and you're like, okay, it's your turn, versus.
No, it was greedy.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, dude. I was making harnesses so I could hold on to the rope. I had a regular harness with a rope that came off of it, and I just wrap it around the handle, and then you would close grip the handle, and then that gave you a harness.
Oh, so you could your arms wouldn't get
the boys rendered it illegal.
They're like, no.
Yep, there was no.
You got to use your arms.
I could go all fucking day,
Yeah, and I bet those turtle skis would probably tow you. Now, if you get towed by one of these massive machines, there's so much pull and you're going fast, you're almost skimming. But that one speed where you're kind of borderline sinking? Yeah. You're probably plowing up wind, just like, trying to hang on.
I'll give you a little tidbit, which you'll love this. So we're on the turtles. It's me and Dave Kalama, and he's on the rope behind me, and I see a giant tiger shark. And I'm like, Dave, check out the tiger shark. He's like, fuck, get me up. I'm like, nah, dude, check out the tiger shark. And he'll tell you the fucking story. I mean, it was when it was all done. And I look back now, I go, what the fuck's wrong with you? Because I left him on the rope till the tiger shark was right there. And then I got him up and drug him at just enough while I'm watching the tiger shark coming after him.
Oh my God.
And I trolled him, and he'll tell you I trolled him. And to me, it was a joke.
Yeah.
Because we were so efficient at what we did.
Yeah.
I knew he wasn't going to fall. In theory.
You're at that point, yeah.
We're at that point, but again, you never know what someone's going to do when there's a tiger shark. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and those things are terrifying in the water. They're just massive.
Oh, I mean, as being on the jet ski, I've seen them rip so many turtles up.
Oh,
and
gosh.
You watch that happen once and you go, okay, I don't want anything to do with that.
Oh, no. And but then at that point, because tow and surfing was so new and exciting, and you were thinking of different ways to approach riding this wave. Like I saw a video of you at one point describing all the different boards that you were getting, and you were pulling boards even off the rack. You're like, yes, finally I can ride a Kelly Slater Channel Islands board. And through windsurfing, you turned some of them into just a twin fin, like a windsurfing style twin fin. Fins are close clustered and they're long swept back. And
Dave was the first one to do the twinny.
Okay.
And the twinny was on PI specific boards, So I mean, we were as far as we were concerned, we were going to the moon, and so we would go over to mud flats with the jet skis, and we would test the boards by whip a guy as hard as you could, have him let go of the rope. Now you're surfing. Now turn as hard as you can. And if the thing bubbled out and cavitated, you knew you didn't have a good combination. If the tail was too fat, So we were in an intricate testing, stage. I mean, there were boards that showed up that Laird showed up with that were, I think they were 12 inches wide.
Wow. Just like skis, essentially.
Yep. Wow.
Water skis.
And on that note, so I water skied Jaws.
Whoa.
Long before Chuck Patterson.
Really? No way.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the first. That was one of the first things that we had to do up there.
Do everything you could, right?
The only thing we didn't do at that point were the rafts and that kind of stuff. And to me, you're asking for trouble when you put yourself on an inner tube.
Well, you're probably not going to make it
Well, you're
from
not.
the beginning.
You're not going to make it. You know.
Not if you take off on a proper one.
Yeah. Exactly. You know.
I mean, you guys also had the surf bike, which was your invention,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, I think you were up there when Dave and Locke did the canoe as well.
Yep.
And I mean, I think at that time, like, I look at all the sports I get to do out there now, and they weren't available because you guys hadn't invented them yet. But it was like that type of experimentation. And you had ridden Jaws on, essentially, we took a BMX bike frame and put it on a surfboard, and you're like, I just want to feel like I have more control, or I want to be able to essentially ride a bike at Jaws.
Yeah. Well, in that year, I ended up being the surf bike world champion.
That's awesome. That still is raining.
Well, it was because the one wave I rode, the bike continued riding all the way into the rocks.
No way.
It just went straight in.
Once
It
I
was
fell,
well balanced. That's good.
But you know, I mean, on the surf bike, I mean, the surf bike was one of the most innovative, cool fucking things I ever did. I didn't get any credit for it, and kind of the boys had kind of put it into this movie, and I was like, well, fuck, dude, you're not going to give the credit where it came from. So I took all the surf bikes back and like, no more surf bikes.
My surf bikes.
But before that, the one big swell we'd had out of Egypt, which is where I screwed my leg up and Laird made the big rescue. We had surfed it one big swell before that.
Oh, really?
On the surf bikes?
No, I showed up with my brand new big wave fucking surf bike, dude. And it had a PI Jaws board on it instead of a regular surfboard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna ride the biggest fucking wave in the world on my surf bike. And here I am. It's 50, 60 feet, Hawaiian.
Yep.
And I'm trying to get up on this bike, and I can't get up on it. Because with the one bike, I had a certain frame configuration, and it just worked perfect where the knee slid through and allowed me to come come to that rail. And this bike I'd made had this swooping frame. It was really, really sleek looking. But
it was aesthetically pleasing.
I'd never even tried to get up on it. Here I am, going to ride 50-foot fucking waves on it,
Jeez.
Well, I never got up on it. And thank fucking God, because it probably would have been the end of my life.
Oh gosh. And then, I mean, was that in the same time frame when you ended up going out there and getting injured with Laird on probably the biggest day ever, right?
That was like 5 years later or more.
Okay.
So that thing doesn't break very often. It takes
if ever, yeah.
Well, we only know of 2 times I've seen it properly breaking.
Yeah.
And that's where Sprecklesville looks like Ho'Kipa on that day when I rode that big wave, where it's closing out from the right to the left, and you're looking at it going, well, what would you even go out for?
Yeah.
But then you go out, and in our case, you're on a jet ski, and I think the big day with Laird, it took us 30 minutes.
Wow.
To get out, because we had to chicken jibe on a goddamn jet ski on a 1200 or 1800, whatever it was. You're still chicken jibe. You can't. When the big ones came, you just couldn't outrun them that way.
And the whitewater was coming almost to the beach that day, correct?
Oh, whitewater was all the way into the soccer field.
I have a distinct I had a distinct memory of that because I was really young, and my dad and I went to Baby Beach to look. And I can remember where all that red dirt was like there was water coming up there. And then where the ironwood trees are up on the hill where people run Booty Hill to work out, the water was like touching up there, and the reef was gone. And it was so big that there was like a fog from the mist. And we couldn't see the horizon, couldn't even tell how big it was. But then you just see white water coming all the way to shore in 50 feet of water. Just rolling like it was Waikiki all the way in, and you're like, oh, it's really big. And then we went down, and back then the forecast was through the radio, right? Yep. And it's like, hey, this is Dave the Wave Slave, and Kanaha is 4 to 6 feet, because it was not forecasted, right? The swell. We come around, and it's the harbor mouth's 40-foot closing out, and I'd never seen it bigger. And it was probably solid 6 feet in the furthest corner of that harbor, barreling, looked like restaurants.
Jeez.
And we were going to go towing surfing, my dad and I, just at Pier 1. And then it was actually one of the DLNR guys was like, probably wouldn't go out there because you're 12. And so we didn't go out. But then that's when the whole story, then while that was all happening, you guys were going through it, And I mean, later on, seeing just the photos from like Wai'ehu side of Pier 1, because I never saw anything from where you guys were at, but the biggest waves I'd ever seen there.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what it was like up the coast then.
Yeah, I was. We'll get into the story, but just to give context, that day, I was picked up by a family friend. I was only 10 years old, and that's like one of my clearest memories ever seeing Ho'okipa. And there was a distinct peak outside of outside of the channel between Lanes and the point, and it was like a barreling A-frame, and it must. I mean, judging how I've seen big waves since then, it must have been 60-foot faces at Ho'okipa.
An ancient reef.
So this just all those two stories just to add context to how monumentally gigantic that day was, and there hasn't been a day that's
I haven't seen
come
water
close.
like that yet. I don't think so.
So please take us through your day that day.
My day was I knew Laird wanted to go, and I knew that Dave Kalama was injured, and I was hiding.
You're like, the next person he's calling is me.
And I'm going, and I'm not even thinking pyramids or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Jaws, outer Sprex. I don't know how big it is. I just know it's a big goddamn day, and you could tell because all of the coast was like in a cloud of salt water, the mist that was being created by the waves, and that was the smaller part of the swell when it was early. It was like, okay, it's probably doable. So Laird's hunting me down. He's calling on the phone. I'm not answering. I'm like, fuck no, I'm not going.
Too bad he knew where you lived, huh?
And I had a little cold, and so I had an excuse. You know what I mean? I was like, I could have gotten away with it, I got my cold. But when he finally found me, I'm like, yep, let's go.
You're like, okay.
And
you went through the effort.
Yes. And so from there, it's like, well, we got to have a second ski in the water. So the second ski was John Denny and Sierra Emery.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, well, John Denny's not really prepared for this. This is not, he's this kid from the East Coast also, but we'd kind of mentored him up there at Jaws to, and he'd ridden some waves and he was there, but I know it wasn't his thing. You know what I mean?
No.
And now all of a sudden we're going out into this incredibly big surf. Well, he's towing. Okay, so the day evolves. We take off from Alima's, which is down there by Sprex. And like I said before, to get out on that day was a 30-minute ordeal. You're just sitting on a jet ski. You're going at full speed over the wave, over the wave, over the wave, over the wave. Nope, can't go. Turn around. And for 30 minutes, we like a windsurfer where we tried to punch through. When we finally got through, it was like, oh my God, look at this place. It was just not a piece of water out of place. It's the most perfect.
And glassy?
Yes. Like for Maui.
Yeah,
Maui glass.
Maui glass.
Yeah, Maui glass, when the wave was breaking, it was an incredible, it was the most perfect.
Just buttered, sucking up. I know what you're describing. It's something
it's
else.
an A-frame, and the left is as big and long as the right.
Wow.
Both of them have a channel, and you're just looking at this going, oh my God, this just sits outside of there, And so we start riding some waves. We get some waves. Everything's going along, and it starts to get bigger. And Laird's like, I want to get my other board, and I'm like, okay, no problem. So we take off. We go back to Alima's. Well, there's other boards in Haiku at the house.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, well, fuck, I guess we can do this. So now, I've gotten my good waves in the morning. He's off going to get his thing. He comes back. He's got his favorite board, and you can tell the surf is starting. And Sierra and John had come in with us also, so we were just sitting waiting for him. But you could tell it was getting bigger. The cloud of mist was getting bigger. Like you said, the white waters rolling in through the Baldwin area were bigger.
Wow.
And so all the anticipation of like, holy shit, it's going to be bigger than it just was is like, oh my God, let's go, because it was perfect.
Yeah.
So there was no fear.
Really?
Superman was ready to go, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we sit there, he gets everything, we start heading out. And we finally bust through after 30 minutes. We get to the outside, and it's like, oh my God, it's a totally different animal. It's now, instead of 60 feet, it's like 80 to 100.
Oh my God.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's something that you just can't even put into words. I think Sierra got one of the first waves, and I remember looking at it just going, that's the biggest wave anyone's ever going to ride, and it's the most perfect wave you've ever seen.
Even more perfect than Pe'ahi Jaws.
Way more.
Really?
perfect.
Just
yeah.
butter and clean.
He's yeah.
Honolulu style.
Wow.
Instead of pipeline.
Yeah.
You know, Jaws is pipeline
Yeah.
backwards. You know what I mean? And Honolulu Bay is just like green light in, and dude, all you got to do is do everything right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my
Jaws
gosh.
will throw a quirk at you. That West Bowl will teach you a lesson really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, whoa, you weren't where you thought you were. This didn't have that, you know. So we're just riding. I had probably, I'm gonna say 6 or 7 waves before I got the wave of my life, you know.
Wow.
And that one was this one where I just all the way from the outside, all the way to the inside. And when I was done, I was like,
Where do you go from here?
yeah, where do you go from here? And the better part of the story was I had to ride Laird's board.
So you had the Laird stance.
Because when I went to go back to go get my board, the fins were completely turned in like this.
Oh shoot.
And something happened when we were going out, the sled
Or just hitting the side, yeah.
or you know,
something.
whatever it was, it just totally, you know, screwed the fin. So I'm like, I had to ride Laird's board, never ridden it before.
How'd it feel?
Incredible. I mean, other than,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, your stance is so wide, but
50 inches wide.
In the end, I think that was part of how I made that last wave. Because that last wave was just like,
And heel straps.
no, at this point, the heel straps were done. I'd already blown my knees out.
But
Oh.
so you didn't use the heel straps on his board.
No, once I blew my knees out at PI, if you ever saw it,
We have the clip.
step into liquid, it was like the heel straps are done, dude. You know, because that was part of what kept me in there and let that whole thing
I
happen.
still
You
think
got
that's
it?
the worst wipeout I've ever seen. Both knees or just the one?
both knees, dude.
Oh.
And I had to sit in the boat the whole day because no one would take me home.
I mean, you got an insane barrel before that happened, though.
No, that was it was one of the first big barrels ridden up there.
So the guys
Yeah.
were like,
And that was a complete one of those fucking wow moments too, to where I had God, it was who's the guy that takes care of Laird's house? Nelson.
Yeah.
So Nelson was my driver that day, which I hated having fucking new drivers. You know, I wanted Dave or Laird.
Yeah.
You know?
the two
Yeah,
kings of the
I
castle.
didn't want Walty. I didn't want Cabrina. I didn't want anybody else. These were my boys, you know. And all of a sudden, I had Nelly driving, you know. And,
What happened?
And in this case, it's for this big, you know, show, this big, you know, step into liquid movie that I'd been excluded out of, you know.
Excommunicado, yeah.
Just like
Oh,
all of a sudden I
no.
show up at Maliko, and there's this whole film crew, and I've got no clue, and everyone's in it but me. And I'm like,
No.
what, you fucking asses.
Yeah.
You know?
What's
The
that about?
strapped crew. Well, that's a whole nother
A
story.
whole
yeah.
nother story. But so
Yeah.
Nelly's my driver, and he dumps me deep. And
you
I
just have to
remember,
pack it.
and I remember going, "What are you gonna do?" And I just fucking packed this fucking barrel, and I'm in there like thinking about school and just like, you know, I mean, like not a thought about where I am or what I'm doing. You know, it was
my
a whole nother
gosh.
subject of.
And you hit that phantom chop?
Oh, dude, I came out of that thing and just all of a sudden I was in the air, you know, and the nose poked, the heel strap stayed on,
Oh, my.
and it just twisted both knees fucking right off, you know.
Oh.
Hey, you made the movie.
And I made the movie. All of a sudden I was signing contract stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you motherfuckers.
Oh my god.
And in the movie, I got the best fucking barrel too.
Yeah, that was
You know?
insane.
Oh my gosh. And so you used Laird's board.
Okay, I used
Was
Laird's
it
board.
brewer, I'm guessing?
Yeah, yep, his brewer, his green brewer, like
That one. Oh, I
yeah,
know the one.
His baby, you know what I mean?
He still probably has that thing.
Well, he does because of me.
Yeah.
Because I was bleeding out in the lineup, and I go, I got to find that board. He won't leave the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
So he had gone to get the jet ski, which was like,
Well, let's back up.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. What's happening? All I remember hearing, because this is some real lore.
Yeah.
This is some
Yeah.
deep, like,
Because no footage.
I mean, I remember even asking Laird once, and he was like, "Those were real 100-foot waves versus the close to 100-foot waves people are trying to ride now." Like he's like, "This was on another scale, couldn't outrun them." And you towed him into a wave that was breaking. He essentially said from like Baldwin all the way down to the airport, it was just running like Ma'alaya, and he's the fastest surfer probably in the world on a big wave. But take us to it.
Well, that was the last wave I had. It was like there was no turning. You were on a roller coaster ride that as fast as I'd ever gone, and when I kicked out, it was like being at Piahi. You know what I mean? There was just this giant channel. You know, just sitting there going, "Oh my God, the most perfect wave in the world," and I don't need any more.
Yeah.
So I put all my energy into Laird. and started getting him some waves, and along came, this gigantic set, and so I drop him onto the wave, and I do my normal, which is I kind of just stay behind the wave. I don't like to be up on the crest. I like to kind of just stay behind and look for signs of life, I call it. And it's a little spray. It's his hair. It's his head. It's whatever,
Indications where he is.
I want to be far enough back that if he's packed it, I'm there and I can make a quick adjustment. If you're on the lip, it's hard to be where you need to be for the rescue if the guy fell back behind.
Yeah.
So I stay back, and that's always been my theory on it. So he's just riding along. There's signs of life. There's signs of life. There's signs of life. No sign of life. So now I'm really focusing backwards to see if maybe he comes up in the whitewater. There he is. So I just come right in.
How big was that wave?
100 foot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
I mean, and like he's a legitimate 100 foot. And there's nothing that tells me it wouldn't get bigger because it's perfect. It's just perfect.
It just needs more swell, more energy.
That's right. That reef is a pinnacle that kind of just goes way out to sea. It's not like Jaws where it's a ledge where Jaws will max out and start getting thicker. This will just keep going.
Jaws after 50 feet goes chopo.
Yeah.
It just thickens. And so without a picture of it or really studying it, you don't realize what happened. And so a lot of people get fooled up at Jaws and they get out on a big day thinking, fuck, no problem.
Yeah.
But the water's moving different, baby.
It's a little faster.
Oh, it's not a little faster, dude. It's a lot fucking faster.
Water density is almost more, huh?
Watch that one video that just from that last big swell where that kid gets he's on the wave and you see him going like that and then the board explodes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I watched that once before with Jerry Lopez. He's halfway down the wave and it looks like this.
It just goes right under.
He's just pulled, and out he goes back.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And that was the realization that there is a top end. But is the top end because our equipment is our equipment. And so that's where the aluminum fins came in.
Mm.
That's why I got this gash down the back of my leg.
Oh, so it's the aluminum fins, right? Yeah.
Dude, they were Ginsu knives.
And they were probably sharpened to as sharp as you could make them for speed purposes.
John Denny cut himself on his board twice before he ever rode it. That's the honest to God truth. That's putting it in and out of the car or the truck.
I mean, you just have blades,
because that was the idea. Just like these new foils, you can't have a chunky foil and think you're going to go 50 knots.
Yeah,
those things are razor blades on the trailing edges.
Wow.
So, I mean, Laird, I think he described at one point you guys were experimenting. He was putting a little GPS on his board, and he was like, "I've hit 55, maybe 60," and he said in this particular wave, he was going down the line, arms spread, and he couldn't go fast enough, and he had to punch through the back, and that's when he saw you.
Yeah.
And you were coming in, and he's like, if you're rating pickups, it was a 10 out of 10.
Yes. And everything was perfect, so I came in, I picked him up, and I'm like, okay, we got it. Now we start to go down the line like maybe we're going to find the corner in the channel, and the whole thing is closed out. But it doesn't register to me other than, hey, close out. It's Frecklesville, just go in.
Yeah.
So we start just heading in, and I realize what's in front of me. And it's no longer a football field thick of whitewater. It's like 3 football fields thick. And it looks like the freaking Colorado River or
cauldron.
Yeah, it's like, this is completely different than anything I've ever seen.
It's just so much water.
Water.
Was the wave behind you guys as big or bigger?
I have no idea because no one was on it.
Mm.
But I know what it did to me tells me that it was bigger. So,
well, if it was closing out, I suppose.
So we're on the ski. We've hit this whitewater area. And we're losing. You can tell we're losing speed. And at this point, I'm looking back, going, "Holy fucking shit, we're done, dude. There's just no fucking way this thing is gonna mow us." Laird's crawled from the sled. He's up on the ski now with me, and he's bouncing and he's doing anything he can and
to like get traction.
Yeah. And I'm just like focusing, going, dude, just fucking make it. Stay on the ski. The farther in you get, the better off you're gonna be. And what I think happened at that point was, the lip of the wave, when it came down and hit the water, it imploded this new wave. Like if you ever watch a wave, it makes a wave in front of itself.
Wow.
Because I was thrown from that jet ski like a like a circus clown in a circus cannon.
No.
Okay. But before I was thrown, I felt somebody hit me in my right calf with a sledgehammer to the point of like the leg is just got to be broken in half and dangling, you know, but that's the last of my thoughts. But
you didn't know exactly what it could have been.
I just knew I'd been hit. And all of a sudden I was 30 feet in the air, flying in front of this wave like a fucking circus
100-foot wave.
Yeah. And I'm just,
gosh.
and the whole thing's going down. And I'm like, you know, at that point, I think I'm just totally in like awe of this situation, just where I am.
Yeah.
And I hit the water, I go under, and I remember being underwater and I'm just swimming. And it's the first time I experienced darkness. So a lot of people talk about, oh, if you go deep enough or it's a big enough wave, it's actually dark. You know, whereas you wipe out Hokipa, you see the light. The light's still there. You know where you are. This is the first time it was like, it was fucking dark. And I'm swimming and I'm getting nowhere. And I'm just swimming and I'm getting nowhere. And I'm fucking struggling and I'm swimming and I'm getting nowhere. And all of a sudden my body just goes, trust the vest. And it was like somebody took over. And all of a sudden I just took my hands and I went like this. I put them right here and I said, trust the vest, Brett. You're going to make it to the surface. Trust the vest. And I just sat like that until I popped up. And when I popped up, I looked and I saw whitewater. And I'm like, fuck, thank God I've made it. I'm looking at the beach, thinking that's the whitewater coming at me. Bam, I'm under. So I didn't get a breath. I had no idea. You know, I'd gone through this incredible experience of pretty much drowning. Come to the surface. I'm looking at the whitewater in front of me, thinking it's the outside of the ocean. And instead, I'm about to take another one on the head.
Oh.
So that one takes me under. From there, I went into what I call a childlike catatonic state. If you took a 1-year-old and you took him and you stuffed him underwater, he'll hold his breath for a minute. If you pull him up, every time you pull him up and his lips sense any kind of air, he's going to take it, just like we do when we're going over the cycle.
Yeah.
And you know your lips are dry and you're going, yes, I got it. You know, any big wave surfer knows it, dude. You're going to grab it when you get it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what was happening with me through this whole wave. I remember my body breathing and holding its breath. Breathing and holding its breath. And I'm sitting there and I'm unconscious other than this kind of memory thing.
Wow.
And then I woke up and I'm in the lineup. The vest is on, I'm floating. The water has this yellow foam this high. It's the foam that floats around in the air.
Yeah.
You'll see it on the beach on giant swells.
Yeah.
It's like air foam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so, as I come to and get my first breath, I'm sucking this stuff in.
Oh.
And I'm drowning on it before I can kind of clear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not consciously doing anything. This is just what my body's doing. And then I start going, where are you? What are you doing? What is this place? I have no idea where I am. I've been completely drowned, you know? And I finally go, oh my God, I'm big wave surfing. You just went through the most fucking incredible fucking thing ever, you know? And then I'm like, but your leg's broken. And I'm like, fuck, that's right, my leg's broken. So I go like this. I go, fuck, dude, nothing wrong with my leg, you know? And I'm sitting there and seconds are going by and I'm like, but the water's red, you know? And I'm like, fuck, everything's red. And I go like this and I just touch it. And I'm like, oh my fucking God. Oh. And I lift it out of the water. I'm like, oh, and it's just the whole, from the back of the knee all the way down to the Achilles tendon is cut like someone took a knife and just cut it to the bone. Oh. You can see the black marrow on the bone.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
No.
And I'm bleeding out and I'm sitting there. Now I'm going, holy fucking shit, dude. This is the real deal. And Laird, he's going through his own experience. So I haven't seen him yet. You know, I've just woken up and I've now assessed my injury. And
You're like, where's Laird? In a way, he could have been a mile away by the wave. Yeah?
And he was. He was so far away, he couldn't hear me. and he's swimming towards me. And I'm yelling, Laird, I need a tourniquet. And he's like, what? I'm like, I need a tourniquet. And I'm like, just fucking, I'm yelling because I want him thinking. I need his brain to be functioning,
Turned on.
Does he need to go back to the ski? What's he got to do, So he ends up coming. He goes, what do you mean? What's up? What do you need? I go, dude. He goes, oh. I remember looking at his face, because I'd already really assessed it out. I'm not afraid of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I and the whole time I'm in this, I'm in the most incredible mood.
Really?
Yeah, because I've survived. I've lived.
You lived through a 100-foot wave.
I lived, dude. I'm alive, and I'm not afraid of sharks. I'm not afraid I'm going to bleed out.
Really?
Because he would have taken me. He already had me.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
So there was this incredible feeling of like, no, dude, you're here. You get to fucking live through this thing. Well, Laird's not feeling that. Laird's
like, I'm going to lose my friend.
Dude, I'm losing my friend. Yeah. He's dying. How am I going to fucking tell his kids? How am I going to tell his wife? So he's going through that whole thing.
Yep.
So he's swimming to me. He's like, he sees it. He instantly just rips his fucking, I don't even know what he's got on because I'm starting to get, a little weird, but he had a brand new short john that Oxbow had made for him that was like neoprene shorts all the way up to here, but it had Lycra sleeves.
Oh, wow. No way.
And so when he ripped it off, it gave him the ability to use those Lycra sleeves to tie the tourniquet.
Wow.
So he got the tourniquet tied. And
ultra tight.
Yep. Well, that's the number one thing.
Yep.
You tie it until the fucking guy cries. I just tied one the other day. The guy slit his fucking wrist. We had to do the whole thing. And get him from Kula down to the emergency ward. And we're talking buckets of blood.
That quick, huh?
Yeah, that was a month ago. I had to go through that.
I heard about that.
Oh
my gosh.
But so he's now gotten that under control, and I can tell he's stalling. And I'm like, dude, you got to find the fucking ski. You got to get that ski because we're never going to make it to shore with me being able to keep the leg. I'm not worried about bleeding out, but I'm thinking I'm going to lose my leg. And so he's like, okay. And he just takes off. And now I'm designing my prosthetics.
Because you're an inventor by nature.
I'm already designing how my surf prosthetic's going to be, what my windsurfing prosthetic's going to be.
No. You just accepted it that it's gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
But at this point, I'm like, oh my God, Laird's green board. If I don't find Laird's green board, he's not going to leave the ocean. He's not going to take me to the beach before he finds his green board. Really? So I'm like, fuck, dude, you got to find the green board.
No way.
So I'm swimming around and I find my board. There's my board.
Wow. It's crazy. It's all right there.
So you were in the lagoon by now, right?
Well, you're in a different lagoon. You know what I mean?
You're kind of in this, it's kind of like this, right?
Yeah. But there's so much water, it's not letting you go in.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, I want to swim from here in.
You couldn't.
No
way.
It was too much water coming out.
It was sucking back out.
It was going into the soccer field and then coming back out. At Baldwin.
Yeah.
So did you find Laird's board?
I found Laird's board. And so when he showed up,
while your legs bleeding out,
I had both boards, and I was so fucking excited to tell him, I found your board. And I think he's looking at me going, what is wrong with you? And I'm just laughing, and I'm just in this euphoric state of I've lived.
So did he grab his board?
He took the boards, put them up onto the gunnel, and he grabs me and
at this point he's naked.
I don't know that. I'm gone. I'm like I said, I'm a little loony at this point.
Oh,
I
for
can
sure.
No, totally.
Something's going on,
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't loony enough to not understand. So he pulls me up on the sled. He's go, get up on the seat. I go, no, that'll make me bleed more. Sitting on the seat with the leg hanging, I was more comfortable kneeling on the sled. So I kneeled on the sled, and I happened to have one of the first safety grabs, which I'd built onto my vest.
So you had like a loop that you could hold on to.
Was not on any vest in the old days, and those are the kind of inventions I had,
Yep.
So he's holding onto that thing. He's taking me in. He gets to Baldwin Beach. He waits or doesn't even wait because it's just there's so much water. He just rides up on the back of the thing, and he literally lands all the way up off the beach, back over 20 feet from the fucking parking lot.
Wow.
And so from there, the first lifeguard comes over. So he's already radioed in. So part of the story too was when he got to the ski, it was about half a mile away. So there was a lot of time between when that ski came back for me to think about my prosthetics and how happy I was I'd found his board. But he got there and the wrist thing had blown off of me in the wipeout. So there's no key to start the ski. Oh. It happens in his fanny pack, which he still has on because he's still got his suit on. Or no, he doesn't. But the fanny pack stayed with him.
He had a fanny pack on?
He had a fanny pack. What? Because he had his energy bars. And
he's just surfing 100-foot waves with like a fanny pack on? Wow.
And inside it is his headphones. And he takes the headphones and he wraps it around the thing to make the clip rise.
Yeah.
You know, a full MacGyver. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here. Because he would have swam to ski and wouldn't be able to come back, you know. Or he hadn't figured out how to hold this and do that while you do that, you know. But so he does that. Where was I going?
Well, then he radioed in.
Radioed in. So
and there was a radio on the ski?
We had a radio on the ski. So
and nothing, from what I heard, is nothing was torn apart, which is kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
And none of it was strapped down.
Wow.
So we hadn't started strapping hoods, seats, any of that
It's
stuff.
just by, maybe the wave was so big, there's so much aerated water that it kind of like found its own little...
We didn't make those mistakes. That was the difference between watching PI today and when we rode PI. There were no mistakes.
Yeah.
And if there was a mistake, you were like put on the sidelines.
Right.
Because when you made a mistake, it put everybody at jeopardy. And again, we were walking on the moon for the first time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have things strapped down because you weren't going to lose the ski. That's just the way it went.
Yeah.
You didn't go get someone if it was going to jeopardize the ski because the ski is more important to make the rescue when you can rescue. Otherwise, you both go in and now you have two skis and, you know, a ski and a rider in trouble.
Yeah.
Then you've got two skis and a rider in trouble. So we didn't do that. But so he lands on the beach. The lifeguard comes over, looks, and I remember seeing the lifeguard his eyes just pop out of his head and just run as fast as he could back to his thing, you know, to get the stuff. By this time, I'm getting really delirious, you know, but I remember I'm kneeling on the thing, waiting for the lifeguard to come, and all of a sudden, Laird grabs me and lifts me up, and he's holding me. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, and I'm just saying, what are you doing? I can't even. And I don't even remember what really happened after that. But what had happened was, if you ever saw Steve Martin in the movie The Jerk, when he comes running out and he holds the dog in front of his penis. I was the dog.
Because he was naked.
Yeah, because he's naked. And, you know, so he finally realized he's naked.
So he's using you as coverage.
He's using me as coverage, you know.
Oh my God. What a story.
So from there, the ambulance shows up. You know, I'm still there consciously. I'm still joking. I'm still in that mode of everything's fine. They take me to the hospital because I basically drowned on that yellow foam.
Yeah.
They wouldn't put me under. And they start cleaning that thing.
Oh, dear.
While you're conscious.
While I'm conscious.
Oh, gosh.
You know? And I'm just like, yeah, dude, you can deal with it. And I deal with it. They staple it with 90-something staples and they send me home. I'm like, are you sure you want to send me home? Yeah, you're good to go. 5 a.m, I wake up. I got 104 temperature.
Oh.
The leg feels like it's burning off. We go as soon as we can to the hospital. We get there about 6, 7 o'clock. And the doctor at the emergency ward starts to undo the thing. He goes, get the operating room. He doesn't even get like the bandages off. He can tell the leg is dying.
Oh, no.
So from there.
Was it an infection or what was it?
It was a gram-negative infection. It had just completely wiped me out. I mean, I was in this flu-like symptoms. The leg was gangrening and dying. They're cutting all this dead flesh out.
Oh my goodness.
And then from there, I think I had 4 different operations in 10 days in the hospital. And each time it was just sponged. They would put sponges in and just wrap it. They wouldn't sew it up or anything because they had to keep coming back and clean the dead tissue.
Jeez.
And it was
That's
a month.
Intense.
I think it was a month or a month and a half afterwards. Laird says, I'm so sorry for what happened. I want to take you to Alaska. So we end up at the Tordilla Lodge, which is a private helicopter for your own personal lodge, a private plane. and the plane will fly you out to these nobody's ever ridden things, and then the helicopter takes you to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God, this is the most incredible fucking thing, until I get to experience what they call the dragon. And that's we're on this cornice, and we're parked on the rocks of the cornice, and we're about to go into the biggest run of our day. And the whole thing just drops 2 feet.
What?
Yep. So if the snow was this high, the whole thing goes and settles. And from there, I'm like, dude, I'm done.
I'm done hanging with you.
Yeah, I mean, totally, dude. I'm like, I'm done. This is not.
This has gotten out of hand.
Yeah, this is not what I want. I'm like, I just went through it. That could have been me. I could have been first guy, dude.
So that was just a huge avalanche wind.
It didn't go. It settled, it's called. It's where the whole plate of snow falls.
Wow.
And so but you see the whole thing move, and you're like, what if I go down there? It's gone.
No, you're not going down. We had to be helicoptered off the thing. You had to like hike up the rocks to where the helicopter could pick you up.
Because from there, that whole thing would have gone.
Would have gone. And if anybody had touched it before it had done that, it would have gone.
Oh my goodness.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was my first experience of like, okay, this is bigger than me. And I can't think of a more terrifying thing than being trapped in the snow.
Oh, well, and it's a fish out of water, a fish on frozen water, but it's a different realm, you know, than being in big waves.
You know, I drowned that day at Pyramids.
Yep.
And it was peaceful. Meaning that if it had taken me, there was nothing happening in my head of fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was the body doing its job.
Yeah.
The same job that a 1-year-old's going to do
Mm-hmm.
when it falls in the pool. You know, that's Matt Schweitzer when he found the kid in the bottom of the pool.
Yeah.
Just saw the gate open in his pool over at Kahana and just was like, fuck, the gate's open. What am I doing? He walks out to the gate and there's a kid in the bottom of the pool.
Jeez.
And he dives in, grabs the kid. And when they bring this, it's like a 2-year-old. When they bring the 2-year-old to surface, it's just like breathing like normal.
Really?
Yeah, that was my first experience of what I call that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, you know, also having
He was like
kids,
in the womb again almost.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Well, like I said, there's an age where you don't have the skill to make bad decisions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we all know, as you know right now, as a free diver and as a big wave surfer, you hold your breath till you're out.
Yes.
You don't start panicking and
You don't breathe water. If you hold your breath till you're knocked out, all those things take over. The nose shuts down, the mouth shuts down. That's why people that have shallow water blackout can come up and actually go, oh, shit, what happened?
Yeah.
Because your body takes over, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy. Geez, so
That's a story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, I mean, that was, I would imagine, sort of the end of your big wave career. What was it like to have your daughter come to you and be like, I want to surf Jaws and do all the things? Was that hard? And she's turned into one of the, you know, best female big wave surfers ever.
Terrifying. If there's a PTSD, it was me. You know, so after that whole thing, I like to say the strap group was a gang. You couldn't just say, hey, I want out. You know what I mean? I felt like I'd earned my way out with that one. And in the end, Laird is, you know, I kept going out with him. He goes, dude, you're done. You're not the same guy. You're not the same driver. And I wasn't. I'd lost all my kryptonite. I was meek. I was done. Wanted nothing to do with big waves ever fucking again. I wanted big waves, but not 100-footers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my daughter, I'd been mentoring her at 9 years old. She asked me to teach her how to kite. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay. Kiting. You know, everyone's dying around me. But, you know, if she wants it, I'll teach her. So I taught her to kite. From there, I taught her how to stand-up paddle. From there, we started to tow. And the tow surfing, she just loved it. For me, it was like, oh my God, what a great gift to my kid. And so we were towing. Then came the paddle revolution. And the paddle revolution took every tow spot off the charts because someone was going to be paddling it.
Mm-hmm.
And in our world, if there's one person paddling, there's no skis, you're not ripping up the water. That's called respect. So we'd show up at Sprecklesville and there they'd be. Okay. And we'd maybe go ride Baldwin or something like that. She's like, Dad, maybe I need to start paddling. I said, okay, well, let's get a paddleboard. So I bought her a 8-foot, paddleboard. I got it shaped. I can't even remember. And she went out and just started catching some inside waves and was like, Dad, I need a bigger board, and got her a bigger board. And by the end, she was, charging outer specs, with the boys and sitting right on the peak.
Yeah, I remember.
And she's like, I want to paddle Jaws. And we'd already towed Jaws a couple times. Because to me, towing and paddling is like two different things. But I held her back. Just like you, Kai. There was times she said, I want to go, and somebody said no.
Yeah.
And so I held her back. I said, you're not ready. This is not the time. And then I got her, and she got up there, and she performed at a level. It was like, okay, you don't miss your waves. You don't screw up. You don't put me in danger. But meanwhile, I'm going through this whole PTSD thing.
Yeah.
It's like the last place in the world I want to be. But as a parent, I know there's no better person to do the job than myself. So I'm like, this is what you do as a dad. You put all the shit aside, no matter how much it's fucking stabbing you, and you just do your job. And that's what I've done, and I've kept her in one piece. She'll say, I fucked her up a couple times.
Well, she ended up winning some massive awards and, one of the top performers at, the Eddie and, getting invited and all that. And it's really cool to have seen how far she has come. And she's definitely, you play with fire, you're going to get bitten eventually. And she's had her injuries, like, how different tow and surfing is to paddling. And that happens to everybody. Paddling, it's not a matter of if, but when you get caught inside or you fall. But once she's on, I think there's one wave that comes to mind in particular. I was paddling with her and I was just sitting farther out than her and I saw her go. And it was like one of those peahi waves that slabs up. It's not just a tall one, but it has like the energy from the channel. And I was like, wow, that was the wave of the day. And I think, she won the Red Bull magnitude event. And
that was awesome.
I was like, it was so nice to see her kick out on the channel. I'm like, oh, there's a few waves where you see people go and you're like, oh, you just praying you see them kick out. That was one of those from behind. I was like, I could see the wave was coming over. I'm like, oh man, if she, she's a little girl and like, I don't want her to get hurt or anything. And you see her come out and her skill prevailed. And you're like, oh, thank goodness. There's relief, but then it was like, wow, how'd she make that? It was a gnarly drop.
Well, then imagine dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine what, you have kids now, it's like, it's the most terrifying thing in the world. But I sat her down, several times. And I said, look, I want to make sure this is yours. Do not do this to impress me. Don't do this for any other reason that it's what you want. You know what I mean? Because for me, I didn't want to be there to begin with. And number two, the last thing I wanted to do was pick up pieces.
Yeah.
And I got to pick up pieces twice now to where she's, taking every single wave on the head and she's all the way to the inside, both her knees and hips the last time all dislocated just from being moved around in the water, and as a parent, you kind of say to yourself, am I facilitating this? Am I encouraging this? And so I've really tried to make sure that everything she does is hers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think we could probably talk about a million other things. We didn't even tap into like a lot of the innovations and kite surfing and being there in the beginning. And
well, that's what the next podcast
yeah,
is.
Well, I was going to say, we definitely need to have you back because there's a lot more to, I think, dive into. And then even the future, talking about the theories of what comes next. Because just when you think something isn't, news going to come along, it sure enough does.
Yeah.
And it's like, I look at the thing that, why are there no bifoils?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? For every stunt plane in the world, it's a bi-wing.
Yeah.
Because you can take away the length and you can create the lift in a different form. You know? And still nobody's put together a proper bi-wing.
I know. We could have a 3-hour podcast just about that for sure.
But I think those are the things you're going to see.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
More innovation.
Another day to look forward to.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much, Brett. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah. Thanks.
I had a little off. Yeah. I had a good